Somebody once asked Rabbi Shteinman Zatzal, how is it possible? How is it possible that Kairach could fool Am Yisrael? How is it possible that he could trick them into thinking that Moshe Rabbeinu was not the ultimate leader? He performed all those miracles, took them out of Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf. So perhaps you'll say that, yes, but that occurred in the past, and at the time of the Maaseh of Kairach, it was years later, and at that point in time, perhaps he could trick them to think he wasn't the leader. But we know by the man was lechem min hashamayim, and it was a lechem of nisim. There are so many nisim about the man, but one of the nisim about the man was, in addition to all else, was that the greater the person, the less he had to work and toil for the man. And the greater the person, the more magnificent the man was without having to do any work. So for people who were not such great tzaddikim, they had to travel further away from their tent to go out and go collect the man, and they had to grind it and bake it and cook it. For people who were greater tzaddikim, they traveled less and they worked less. For the greatest tzaddikim, the man came right to their tent. Came right to them. And they didn't have to work at all. And it tasted like any taste they wanted to taste like. So every day, Klal Yisrael had a Raya Brura. Every day they had a complete proof that Moshe Rabbeinu was the greatest tzaddik. Because every day the man would come straight to his doorstep. So how could Kairach possibly trick the Yidden to think that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't the leader? So the Rosh Hashiva Zatzal answered, they couldn't trick Klal Yisrael to think that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't a tzaddik. That was impossible. But what they attempted to do was to trick them into thinking that in spite of the fact that he was a great tzaddik, but he wasn't a manik. He was a tzaddik, but he wasn't a leader. And they needed him to be their leader. So what is a Manig Yisrael? What is a Gadol B'Yisrael? What is the characteristic of a leader of Klal Yisrael? Well, perhaps we don't have to look any further than in that parasha itself. Because in the parasha of Korach, when they were going to offer the minchas, the korban mincha, to see who the Ribbono Shel Olam would choose, Moshe Rabbeinu asked the Ribbono Shel Olam, Al tifna el minchasam. Don't accept their mincha. Don't accept it from them. Moshe Rabbeinu said, I didn't take anything from them. Not even one donkey, loy nasasi. Not even chamor echad. I didn't take a chamor echad mehem loy nasasi. I didn't take anything from them. Even when I left Midian, the safety of Midian, to go to Mitzrayim, endanger myself on their behalf, I did it at my expense. I didn't ask anything from them. And that was one of the defining characteristics of Rabbi Shteinman Zatzal. He took nothing for himself. The most selfless person you could meet. Hardly eating, hardly drinking, hardly sleeping in his tiny apartment. The most selfless person, devoted completely, entirely to Klal Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest leader of Klal Yisrael. He was in the palace of Parai, and luxury and safety. But Moshe Rabbeinu went out. Vayetze, vayar b'sivloisa. He went out of his comfort. He left his comfort zone. He left that palace and luxury to see how the Yidden were, to witness their suffering, to suffer with them, to protect them. Vayar ki ein ish vayaches hamitzri. To suffer with them, to protect them. Lama ta'kereyecho. And that was the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal. They say, I personally can't be made in this, but I have heard people say that during the time of wars in Eretz Yisrael, that he used to sleep on the floor, on the stone floor. And people asked him, why is the Klal Yisrael suffering? How can he sleep on a bed? And his bed was not a bed of luxury. Bare minimum, his furniture in his apartment, but he slept on the floor. He went out. It was very rare for a Litvish Gadol, particularly his age, to go and leave his home, leave Bnei Brak, and travel the world to be Mechazek Yidden. But he traveled the world. I remember the first time that he went to America. It was such an amazing sight. Aaron Leib Zatzal, coming to America. A Gadol of that stature didn't come to America. So everyone was talking, wondering, why is he coming? Who's he collecting money for? Which Meiser is going to get the money? How much money is going to get? Endless list. He came to be Mechazik. He came to be Mechazik Yid. Nobody believed it. Nobody, but papers took out and wrote articles and op-eds just explaining that he came to be Mechazik and only to be Mechazik. He certainly could have raised, who knows, tens of millions of, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, but he never didn't ask for anything. He wanted to be Mechazik, and he did. He was Mechazik. I remember I was in Argentina, and they still talk about the time that the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal came, and they gathered. It was the whole community came to. It was Ma'achad, the whole community, Mechazik, the community. They have Kodelim there, Chadorim over there. He traveled to Gibraltar. He traveled the world. He traveled to France. I remember several years ago, I asked him if I should go to France. I was invited to come over there. He said, it's a very dangerous place. But he went to France. Went to Brazil. Mechazik Yidden, for only to be Mechazik Yidden. And he was Mechazik. He was Mechazik then. But he never took anything for himself. He never asked me for anything. He certainly could have. He never, ever, ever asked me for a thing. He was Mechazik me, as he was Mechazik so many others. And Vayar b'sivloisa, and he went, even though he suffered. I remember there was a siyum. There was once a siyum. And it wasn't the world siyum. It wasn't a major siyum. It was a siyum of Sechas Erevin. And through the cycle of the Daf Yomi, maybe after Erevin, got a little weaker, a little shvach. And he wanted to be Mechazik, the people to continue learning, and to be Ma'ached. But he wasn't feeling well. He was very weak and very sick. The siyum was in Yerushalayim, but he insisted on coming. He came from Bnei Brak to Yerushalayim. And I was sitting next to him. I remember he was groaning in pain. He was groaning, suffering, in such tsar, in such pain, that he could not suppress the groans. But he came, he stayed, And soon after, right after the scene, he immediately left, and they took him home. They took him to the hospital. So many times he was in the hospital, came from the hospital, straight to his apartment, doors open, to be Mechazek Klal Yisrael. He had the unique character trait that he was a great leader. The big issues of the day, of all the things facing Klal Yisrael, that people were miyayitz with him, whether Rosh Hashivas or Menalim or politicians that came to be Shoyal Eitzah. He led them, he was madrich them, but he had the unique capability of dealing with the Yachid. One person that had a tzara, one person that needed a bracha, one person that needed chizik, shoyal eitzah. His door was always open. It was open for Rosh Yeshivas. It was open for any young bacher that wanted to come and needed a bracha and needed a chizik. Some of the defining characteristics of a great person, a Manag Yisrael, is that we don't really know them. We think we know them, but we don't. It was told to me by some of the descendants of the Chafetz Chaim that he was so great and his works were so outstanding, but he conducted himself as it would be a normal person, a regular person. Rav Simcha Wasserman Zatzal once told me that he was a Talmud of the Chafetz Chaim, he was the son of Rel Chanan, he was a nephew of Chaim Ozer, that Gedolim, great people, work, their avoid, a part of their avoid is to conceal their greatness. It's behind the veil. We don't really know their personalities. And that was true of the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal. We thought we knew him, but he concealed his greatness. He was not known as a warm person. He was known as a Gadol B'Yisrael, Yer Shemayim. But he was not known in a especially warm person. But did we really know the Rosh Yeshiva? I remember at one Asifa, Amalav Malka, I was sitting next to him. And there was a drasha. Someone was giving a drasha. And in the middle, I chapped a pachad. All of a sudden, I felt somebody grabbing my hand. It was a Rosh Yeshiva. And under the table, as the drasha was going on, he held my hand, and he just kept holding it. And then he took his thumbnail, and he was flicking my finger, my nail on my finger, and then pressing his hand into my finger, and holding it and pressing it and flicking it with the great sign of affection during the course of this drasha. We thought we knew the Rosh Yeshiva, but who really knew him? It says by Moshe Rabbeinu, when the Rabbeinu Shalom asked him to go and redeem Klal Yisrael from Mitzrayim, Mi anoichi, who am I? Who am I to go to speak to Parai on behalf of Klal Yisrael? Mi anoichi, who am I? If I would ask anybody who the most likely candidate is to go to speak to Para on behalf of Klal Yisrael, the answer would be Moshe Rabbeinu. Only Moshe Rabbeinu. He grew up in the palace. He grew up in the palace, could speak to kings, could speak to Parai. Klal Yisrael were slaves. They were avodim. They were slaves for 210 years. Who should speak to Paro? A slave? Or someone who grew up in the palace? Moshe Rabbeinu, only Moshe Rabbeinu. Mi anaychi, who am I? The greatest anova. That's a Manik Yisrael. That's a Gadol B'Yisrael. That was the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal. With all his pikchis and all his Torah and all his Yiras Shamayim. Mi anaychi. In his tiny apartment, greeting people, lines of people, greeting people, sitting on his bed, many times without a jacket, just a hat, in the simplest manner. The greatest anova. Mi anoichi. That was Rav Aaron Leib Shteinman Zatzal. Say nafshet tzru b'tzorah chaim, and he should be a male tziyasher for all of us.
Som nafshi la loiki likai lechu.